got the post-race blues yet, buddy?
Me? No, I got the post-race pump-ups.
Do you?
Yeah, man.
You got the feels.
I got the feels.
Ah, that's good.
Yep. Isn't that like a song, too?
It might be.
Yeah, I think it is somewhere. How about the feels? But yeah, I
Welcome.
do. Welcome to the Crushing Iron Triathlon Podcast, episode 206?
8.
Look at me, undersell us every time.
Undersell. We're under promise, over deliver.
Yeah, at least most of the time. But yeah,
We try to remember that.
Episode 208. Are we coming up on our official date of 2 years?
Anniversary?
Yeah, our anniversary.
I think we're going to need a mathematician on that.
Yeah, I think we are too.
We may, wait, 52.
Dude, don't even try. We can talk about this off the air. We occasionally attempt to sound smart, so let's not ruin it by trying to do math on the air.
Yeah, the only numbers I know are 10, 17, and yesterday was my anniversary for that. So
exactly. And who the hell cares about the rest?
Yeah, it's you can get caught up in the numbers, man.
You can. How are you feeling post-race?
I think I texted you that I feel kind of scarily good.
Scarily good.
Yeah, I'm back. I'm kind of back in already.
Okay.
But I have decided though that next year's only going to be halves and ollies. I'm kidding. Isn't that the natural? Actually, I thought that on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, people go like it's either like I'm going to do 2 next year, or I'm probably going to back it down. Probably just going to do 8:30s and back it down a little bit. No, they're probably halves and always next year until about June.
Yeah,
and then it's I don't know. Maybe I'll see if I can get into Chad or Louisville or Wisconsin or something else. But yeah, I think I'm sure there's plenty of athletes that are wrecked after a race, and when you have conditions that are like crazy on one end of the spectrum, like really, 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 really hot or really, 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 really cold, you tend to actually, outside of like severe cramping, and maybe some other issues, that you tend to be not as sore because you're just not able to really lay the hammer down, because you're balancing that, your body is balancing that survival. Like it's self-preservation is at the top of the pyramid on race day, is self-preservation, not ultimate performance and just totally emptying the tank. It's what do I have to do to finish, and how can I get from point A to point B, and how can I keep my body warm? It's not, okay, well, my body is very easily cooling itself right now, it's no big deal, or my body is very capable and it's very easy to keep warm, so I can just totally trash my body. If you had tried that, and a lot of athletes did, I think, on a race like Louisville, well, then you are basically, you look at it as kind of like, like when you get like a power surge, you got too many things, you got too many outlets going, you're trying to ask too much of the surrounding kind of network, and so everything just goes out. And it's not like it's too much in one place, it's just too much in a lot of places, and so you have to just kind of pick and choose when to go and when to not. And on a race like Louisville, you really couldn't lay it down. I mean, no, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of reason to be sore, but a lot of athletes that I've heard back from said they're just kind of surprised how not sore they are, or the level of soreness is not the to the magnitude in which they had anticipated.
Yeah, and of course, I think for me, I had a really good 2.5 months of training leading up to that, which was probably not only more, but just better described and better executed in the past. So I think I was just more prepared for it. But what you're saying makes a whole lot of sense. It's kind of hard to unleash when you're cold. And in general, you just, it's like going out in the cold and running, starting to run. I think there's a little bit of over or undertow of that throughout the whole day. The other thing I was wondering is maybe if it was, so cold out there that, because I thought of this one time when I did that Rev 3 race when it was super cold, and we, that was an Olympic for me. So, but I was still kind of new to the sport, and whenever I do those races, I used to get super sore. It was so cold that I wondered if, on some level, maybe it kept inflammation down. I mean, I
had an athlete joking with me about that yesterday. It was like, yeah, our bodies are on ice all day, so maybe that helped with the recovery.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought about it specifically that last time I did that really cold race because of the water was so cold, and I was literally numb. My feet were numb into almost all the way through the run, and I don't know. But it was, regardless, it's kind of nice to get done with something like that, and knowing how we trashed our bodies, and actually you get through that, and in a way you feel better than when you did it. So I think, to me, that was really, in a lot of ways, that's the whole point of why we do hard things. You push your body to every once in a while like that, to the extreme, and I think that's what the body is calling for, to be honest. I think that the more we sit around and pamper ourselves, the softer you get, and the more prone you are to injury and things like that. So there's that line too that I think that's it's it's kind of like, why do we do these things, or how do you explain to other people why you do them? So it's because they're hard, and your body wants to do hard stuff like that, and that's how that gets stronger and ultimately healthier. And plus, I think a big part of feeling good after a race is the relief part of it. You know what I mean? Like I certainly felt an emotional settling in my brain. That Monday, it was just a calm of large proportion.
A calm of large proportion.
Yeah.
The hard thing is it's a tough one for me. We kind of texted back and forth about this yesterday a little bit, not in the same context, but I think there is a difference in the illusion of hard and going after the hard. And don't get me wrong, I think accomplishing, regardless of the course and regardless of the conditions and regardless of all things, completing a 70.3 or a full Ironman, whatever it is, even where regardless if the swim is cut short, the swim's not cut short, the swim is canceled, is an extremely incredible feat that, let's say 1% of the population has, chosen to take on.
1 or 1% of 1%.
It's probably 1% of 1%. I mean, I fully believe that probably 20% of the population probably could do one. They just don't want to, or they just don't think they can. But it's kind of it's within that definition of hard that also lies that I want it to be hard. I just don't want it to be too hard. Yeah. I want it to be. And I think a lot of that is the mental and emotional barriers that we create for ourselves going into races. I need something, and I think it doesn't stem. I think it stems more to I need something more mentally that I can wrap my mind around. Because listen, like if you're going to do a full and you've never done one before, it is impossible to wrap your mind around it. Especially if you're like just getting started. Like it is. It's like I think that's what one of the more enjoyable things to look back on with an athlete that's gone to their first and they had like a year and a half or whatever to train, or a year, and they're like, you look back to their like notes, like the first 2 weeks, and they're doing like 2 miles, 3 miles, and they're like, I have no idea how I'm going to do 140.6.
Yep.
But they still, but they continue, like, and I think in this world where we like crave and have like I think somewhat like an addiction to things that are certainties, that are for sure, where we rarely ever take risks anymore. We want certainty. We want 100% confirmation. We want everything to be told to us so we can know everything up front, no matter what. I can do this or I can't do this. And I think that the hard part, it lies in the unknown, and like, just think if like you approached your whole life that way.
Right.
I don't know if I can do it, and I can't at this moment like wrap my mind around how I'm ever going to be able to accomplish this, but I know that I want it, and I know that I'm willing to try, so what the hell? Let's go for it. Instead of being so scared and paralyzed by fear that we just never do it. And I think a lot of athletes struggle with that athletically, that they just can't wrap their mind around it, therefore they can't. And that also goes to other areas of life. But I think that's the most admirable part of so many athletes that do these, is that when they do it, I had an athlete too that is signed up for Ironman Louisville next year, and he was in the finisher chute volunteering this year. He said he wanted to be there and experience it before he officially signed up, and he was giving out these finisher medals and seeing like all these different ages and shapes and sizes and abilities, come to the finish line. He was like, even seeing those, he was like, it's still so hard to wrap my mind around just being able to do that all at once on one day. Yet you drop $750 and you say, I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. It's like I think that part of the confidence gets totally lost sometimes. Like, you had the confidence to sign up, and then like 2 weeks later, sometimes it's all gone. And I think it's such an interesting study in like mental and emotional, decision making and sensitivity and confidence and all those kind of things.
Yeah, you got to have blind faith, and you have to. Yeah, you do. You. Well, how many times do we do that? Yeah, we talk. It's just sort of this. It's walking the talk, man, and throughout our lives, I think there's many times, I know I've done it, where I kind of believe that I can do stuff, and I'll just say, yeah, I'm going to do that or whatever. I'm going to do this and that or whatever, and then the reality of coming down to do the work and the process that it takes to actually get there is the equalizer, and you don't go through it. But you're right. It's funny how people sign up and they're excited about it. And I remember the first time I signed up, and it was so exciting, and I had doubts or whatever, but I was ready to go do it. And then like a few weeks later, once the reality hit of what that's going to take, or it doesn't matter if you want to, be a attorney or a singer or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of work ahead. You can do it. Anybody can do it if they just put themselves through the process. It's like, I always tell people, like, what diet, or people ask, what do you do, or, what's your nutrition, what's your diet? And I say, just pick a diet. It'll work probably. You just got to stick with it, And,
yeah, whether it's the best one for you or not is probably, who knows, but yeah, just stick with it and don't like go back and forth. Mm-hmm. And that's like the worst thing you can do, and athletes do that, and like we do it as humans. We go back and forth on every single thing we can possibly imagine. We'll go hardcore for 4 to 6 weeks, and then we'll just totally fall off the wagon. Yeah, and then pick something new, and then. But that goes back to our why, Yeah, and I just think I would love to hear maybe our athletes and our members in our Crushing Iron closed group on Facebook can kind of start a conversation like, what were you thinking and feeling when you signed up to do your first 70.3 or Ironman, having never done one? Because I just think it's so interesting in like the psyche behind and the mentality behind like just having honestly, no clue whatsoever if you're even going to, especially for like athletes who are really very, very, very new to this sport. It's becoming really, really common to see athletes that have like never done a triathlon sign up for an Ironman in their first year. And I honestly think like they're more like naive, so it's not as intimidating because they haven't gone through the process yet than the athlete who's been doing, sprints and Olympics for a few years, and they're just like, I just can't wrap my mind around doing a full.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's almost like they don't know it better.
It's like exactly. It's like the freshman, quarterback coming in, that's supposed to be phased by the big game experience, but he's never had one, so we don't know the difference.
Mm-hmm.
So he just goes there and just kind of does, and he's kind of naive to the whole situation, which can be a good thing.
I think so, yeah.
In a way, but it's just like, and then how you approach the rest of your, like, everything else we do in life, and it's like I need to know, like, for sure, like, is this good, or is this going to real? I need everything up front. But you walk into this unknown journey that's going to last almost a year, if not more, and you just believe in yourself, whether you honestly kind of think that or not. You have to some level, totally and utterly believe in yourself that you can do it. And you might not say that, you might not feel that every minute of the day, but you want to. And then you find resources and training plans or coaches or clubs and whatever to help you get along that way. And I think it's just signing up for one is the easiest thing to do physically. But I think emotionally and mentally, you kind of have to, you kind of have to be insane sometimes to just like have blind faith in yourself, which would be such a great thing to have in so many other aspects of life.
Mm-hmm. And I think when you get into it, you, in a way, like looking back on it, I got lucky because I had a few guys around me that had been there and they knew you, and I connected with you out of the gate. And I always think about that as like, what if I would have just, on a whim, thought I could do Ironman and tried to train for myself? I just think it would have been a cluster, man. And it probably would have maybe happened, and I would have struggled through it or whatever. But the reality was that the learning curve was shortened so much.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I had access to you and other people that had been through it, but like the idea of being able to communicate with you and have a coach, and that was such a big deal. I can't even describe why that matters so much, but it was. I suppose it was because I know I ought to probably gotten way out of focus and confused and tried things that would have just wasted time and all kinds of bad avenues. But I just think that regardless of I guess I shouldn't want to say that, but I just think it's a big deal to have somebody that knows what the hell's going on, because you can go down this thing and just really create some serious problems, because it's not easy. It was funny the other night, it seemed like most people, and we were waiting for them to come in, and they would all come down the finish line. We were kind of waiting right behind the finish line, and when they got their medal, they would come over and they would just be looking at us going, that was so hard. That was so hard. But they were smiling. It was this weird kind of thing,
It's a crazy journey for somewhat crazy people.
Mm-hmm. Hey, listen, do we want to talk about any of that stuff?
I don't know.
We're trying to stay positive.
Yeah, I don't think I want to.
Okay.
Because I don't really want to go off on a huge tangent.
Really? Oh, man, but people like your tangents, I think.
Yeah, sometimes. They can be a little bit raw. All right, fine. So there was if you attended Ironman Louisville, this has been a big discussion on all kinds of Ironman forum boards and groups and chats and real life or whatever, but there was a huge discrepancy over the weekend at Ironman Louisville with the shortened swim and the what seemed like answering the impossible question of and if so, what are the cutoffs for the race. I will say, like, everything is easy to nitpick on the flip side of things. But when the race starts, in the athlete guide, it specifically lays out the cutoff times, how it's going to be generated, and what the general cutoff is with the time on the clock of day. Also, with the last person that enters the water. And well, apparently, when the swim was shortened, they took off. So obviously, 2:20 is the last swim cutoff, and so they cut the swim cutoff down to an hour. So what they ended up doing, it sounds like, is they took another hour and 20 off the cutoff time, where a lot of miscommunication came in from the race coordinators and their communication with kind of their team, was that nobody had an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And none of it was communicated to any of the athletes before the race or even during the race. And that's where I see a gigantic problem. Make the decision. There are a lot of athletes out there who needed every minute. And there are a lot of athletes who probably took their sweet time in transition without even thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Transition times were, I would be willing to bet if you looked at every single Ironman event across the world this year, the Ironman Louisville will have the highest average transition time of any race that has gone on in the world this year.
Probably, yeah.
Ironman. I bet it's not even close. I bet the average transition is over 13 minutes. And so you take that into context of T1 and T2, you're looking at probably an average of 20 to 25 minutes, where you combine both of them, and it's usually an average of 10. So you take 15 minutes. That might not sound like a lot, but that's a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that we spent a good deal of time because we hadn't heard the cutoff time had changed. The biggest thing is, like, the race directors and the coordinators and the officials whoever came up with this time while the race was going on, which I don't think is a good move. I think every athlete, especially on the end of the spectrum, that's really fighting tooth and nail to make it to the finish line within the cutoff or to meet the cutoff times, needs to know these things.
Mm-hmm.
But it was never communicated. It was decided on. They said it was decided on during the race, but apparently it wasn't, because I talked to an Ironman official in the finishing chute and asked him what the official cutoff time was for every athlete, and he specifically told me 12:45 a.m. And you got athletes running around the course doing this, like, how much time do I have left? What time's the cutoff? And so you're communicating what's been communicated with you, and so you have all these athletes finish, and I don't know how many athletes finished after what ended up being what they say was the cutoff time, and then they change their results at like 2 a.m. And so they go from this like huge high of I finished, I did this, and they wake up and they go back to look at their iron track or thing, and it says DNF. And then they get this explanation that all this was decided on while the race was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what I have to say.
Oh.
First off, this should have all been communicated during the race. The whole change of swim start and thing was very poorly communicated. Everybody just kind of followed the leader, then nothing else was communicated. I think that was the biggest mistake. Get all your ducks in a row and figure it out, because it matters. Secondly, if you finish the race and you didn't get pulled off the course, if you finished the race, you did every single mile that was allowed for you to do, and you ran down the red carpet, and you ran under the finishing arch, and you heard your name called out, you are an Ironman, and you got your finisher medal, who gives a shit
Mm-hmm.
what Iron Track says or an Ironman website says? Honestly, because you don't let anything take that experience away from you. Who cares? I think they could have done a lot of things a lot better, obviously. Obviously, it was a hard situation to deal with in the first place. I get it. And you're going to have people who are going to nitpick and bitch and moan and be very you know, just a total tool about the whole situation, and that you aren't an Ironman already because you did a 0.9 mile swim and not a 2.4. But I'll tell you right now, I've seen loads of races that were full distance in conditions that every athlete on that day, I bet you money, they would have chosen to swim 4 miles if they had gotten better conditions and still done the 112 mile bike and the 26.2 run. The day alone is one of, if not the hardest days I've ever witnessed. It reminds me of Rev 3 70.3 in Knoxville that year you did in 2013, where the DNF rate was crazy high, and it was only for a half. Mm-hmm. It's the day. It's what are you handing on this day? And so if you're somebody who, thinks that you're better than other people because you did the extra 1 point, whatever, 4 mile swim or whatever, and you did it on some different course on a different day in different conditions, I would hope that you wouldn't jump to the conclusion that you would have had any business finishing the day that a lot of these athletes were able to finish on Sunday. Because as a coach who has had athletes compete in every single race you can possibly imagine, this is the very first race I've ever been tracking athletes, and I never looked at their times. I was just concerned with making it to the next checkpoint. Mm-hmm. Never. I still don't know any of my athletes' times. I went back and looked at a few, but it was interesting, just like a change in my mentality of looking at athletes. I never once looked at their splits, not even on the bike, not even on the run. I didn't look at what they were running. I just saw it, and I remember we all of us, we had a huge group there spectating. We don't look, hey, so and so made it to the next one, because it was literally about surviving. Mm-hmm. The bike course that was chilly, the bike course that was dangerous, everything was hard. The run, it was, was chilly. I mean, it was a freaking hard day. And I've had athletes too that have done so many other races, and they will tell you it was the hardest race they have ever done, hardest thing they've ever done in life. Mm-hmm. So who cares? Yeah. Honestly, who cares?
Yeah, and again, it's like I'm sure there's other races that have been harder and what have you. But what I've had a hard time kind of understanding is that, there's this general perception that Ironman has this tendency to sort of try to make things seem or appear like they're going to be, easier or, more doable to get more people to sign up. I mean, would you think that's a fair statement?
100%.
So when they go that far out of their way to try and get, people who may be uncertain, a lot of people that are, focused a lot on the cutoff times and that sort of thing. And suddenly they get dealt one of the hardest days that, they can imagine. They showed up, they did all the work. Then all of a sudden you're going to get nitpicky and weird and stickler all about the cutoff times and whatnot. I just think that's bizarre, man. How can you, we were talking yesterday, it's like, I'm not sure what happened with the actual time or the cutoff time. You just said they made it an hour in the swim, which obviously most people should have been able to make regardless if they could even swim or not, because it was just sort of a floater. But that has nothing to do with it. But once you set, you're starting at 9:30 instead of 7:30 or whatever the case is. You got 2 hours, so you're going to move. Like whoever's the last person in the water, that's when they should adjust the. In my opinion, like you've got the roads for so long, right? That's how this stuff works, is that right? They reserve the river area for X amount of time, and then other boats can go out or whatever. And then the roads is like they have it kind of legally cut off, and just set a cutoff time, and then set the ultimate end cutoff time. And I don't understand why they how they can get so down to the minute on like pulling them off on the first loop of the run. Who's to say if they've got 2.5 hours that they can't like find something and turn it on, and just sweep, just go behind them. And if you're not done by 11:40 or 12:45, you didn't make it. Tough, sorry, but whatever. But to have all these different, cutoff times individually, it just seems like complicating things for some. I don't even know why you would do that. Or am I reading that? Isn't that kind of what happened? Is like based on your time of going in?
I think they just made shit up, honestly.
That's what it seems like. It's sort of like, isn't the whole thing that you get 17 hours? Right?
I think at Louisville you sign up for 16 and a half.
Oh, okay. Because it's dark and you start a little bit later.
Dark.
And they normally have
sign off to agree to finishing at 16 and a half.
But my point is like, okay, you set the time at these races instead of all these, like, I just think it should, this is when you have to be done. Say it's 12:30. That's when you got to be done. Be done, and it's a rolling start. So if you think the swim's going to take a little longer, get up front, or do what you got to do.
Something I don't know the answer to, but I would love to get it, is did they do the same thing in Ironman Chattanooga?
I don't know. I know I was there.
Or do they adjust it at have they adjusted it at every other race that's been shortened? I'd like to know the answer to that too.
Yeah, I'm sure I bet they have. It just seemed like a weird.
I don't know. I don't know if that's a tough one.
But my point is, like, if they can suddenly, I'm assuming that 12:45 wasn't the original cutoff time they had in mind.
Exactly, it wasn't even close.
So obviously they have flexibility on that a little bit. So at some point, why not off the bike? Have a big sign made for everybody coming off the bike that says you got till 12:45.
Yeah,
that is something like that. Just be simpler.
Well, we don't live in a world where things are simple.
You got till 12:45.
You got till 12:45.
Go
man.
Nuts.
Yep, go nuts. Have at it.
Yeah.
I have a hard time swallowing that one. And regardless of who you are and how it does, like it was. Listen, half the pros DNF'd. I feel like age groupers that I know that are top level Kona qualifiers didn't even make it off the bike. Didn't even make it off the bike. They quit. This is one of those races where who cares what the Ironman website says. If you finish the day and you cross the finish line, please don't let anybody take that accomplishment away from you. Because what you learned about yourself that day and what you were able to achieve and overcome and endure is not only something that you'll never forget, but it is something that you will be able to use in races and events years and years and years and years from now. And you will still be allowed to use it, and you will still be allowed to tell the stories, and you will still have your finisher medal. You will still have your picture coming down the finishing chute. You will still remember the whole day that you made it and you didn't quit. Not being on the Ironman website as an official finisher because they changed it after the fact will not take any of that away.
Yeah. What's the I was trying to think of like when they pull wins out of NCAA tournaments or something like that, and these
so useless.
The players actually went out there and won, a national title now that's like not a record, which is
they have like a scandal or they have like improper benefits or whatever, and they're like, oh, we're gonna go back and we're gonna vacate every single win from 2010. They're like, those dudes don't even care. Yeah. They got to experience making it to the Final Four or winning a championship. You think they actually care that there's a banner that's going down in the arena?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah, it's boxed up. That it'll probably come out 20 years later. It's funny how people. I feel like a lot of famous people, it seems to me, like they try to live their life to leave the legacy. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's sort of like I want to leave a record of my existence, and that's important to me instead of like just going through life and living in the moment and experiencing what it has to give. And that's like, why do you have to,
I
get it a little bit.
So I have a bone to pick.
Uh-oh.
So I'm looking at the Ironman Chattanooga website.
Right.
Who didn't even have a swim.
Mm-hmm.
The last official finisher, came in at 14:48. From the responses I've been with screenshots and info from Alexandra Cook, coordinator with Athlete Services for Ironman, every athlete was given 15:16 of total race time.
Okay.
So Ironman Chattanooga with no swim had what looks like it's 14:48.52 was the last finisher. So I'm not sure what the actual cutoff was, and I honestly don't know if they did cut anybody off because it's not showing it. It's not showing. It's just showing people's sporadic bite times or do not starts. It's not even showing like part of their run. So that's like a 28-minute difference. So I'd like to know what the official cutoff time was for Ironman Chattanooga, because that doesn't really seem to add up, in my opinion. But anyway, whatever. It is what it is. Don't sweat it. It's it's one of those things like,
Well, it's not the race you signed up for either. That's the part that kind of irritates me, I think. It's like, I always, for years, I've talked about how much I just loved doing my first race at Wisconsin, because everyone was in the water at 7 and you knew you had till midnight.
Yeah, another problem with the rolling start.
Yeah. And now all of a sudden you've got the race changing, which changes all the times, and that changes all the elements. You're thinking you're going to roll into the water by 8 o'clock, but no, they're going to make you stand in the cold, freezing rain barefoot for an hour and a half before you get into the water. Which I understand that they make changes and it's not going to always go smoothly. What I don't quite understand is that, why, okay, going into the practice swim the day before, they knew that current was supreme, it was up there. And did it change that much overnight, or did they expect it to change a lot?
It was crazy strong the day before.
Yeah, and it seemed crazy strong the day of. It was one day later. It was, 15 hours.
It was less than 24 hours from the practice swim.
Right, so there was no testing or no, plan B in order. I don't know. It's just... I know you got to adjust on the fly, and I know things are getting crazy, but don't get so stickly on the end of that thing. If you're going to make these athletes adjust and on the fly and change their whole game plan, and all these things are happening the morning of the race, and all of a sudden you're going to be like, oh, sorry, you didn't 2 minutes, you missed it by, we're not going to, you can't get into the club.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so immature, really.
Yeah. Well,
so
it is what it is.
You got some. I mean,
you see, you're still flustered by it.
Well, I am, because I don't know. It's just there's some hypocrisy there or something that's eating at me. I like things to be logical and hey, let's just be fair, or honest about it and whatever, and but I know we've been kind of and we can talk about this from just an informational standpoint, because I know you've been following it, but the whole situation going on at Florida too is interesting. And what's the latest there? What do you what's on your mind about moving Florida over to Haines City?
Yeah, so I mean, if you aren't aware, or most of you probably are aware, I would imagine that obviously Hurricane Michael came through.
Oh yeah. Which reminds me, if and I feel
Jeez.
bad. I was just
Excited much?
well, no,
Jeez,
I mean,
Louise.
it's like
It's a little early.
I didn't even realize it was Hurricane Michael till like a couple days ago. That's how much I watch the news, and I feel I know there's a ton of destruction down there, but I feel I don't know. I don't like being named after a hurricane or vice versa.
Yeah, I think it was vice versa.
You think?
I mean, no offense, but I think
I survived
don't think your
Hurricane
parents-
Michael.
yeah,
I should give
think your
T-shirts
parents
to
were
my
like,
old
"Man,
girlfriends.
2018, there's going to be a hurricane, and it will destroy Panama City. We shall name our son Michael."
Yeah.
No, Hurricane Michael came through and it looks like just absolutely obliterated Panama City Beach. I mean, you and I have friends down there that live there, and Allie does too. She's from Fort Walton, which is just down, and got spared, I think. But so there was a ton of uneasiness and uncertainty with the cancellation or non-cancellation of the race, and we talked about it a little bit over this last weekend. I said they're for sure gonna either cancel the race or announce a move because they'd rather have everybody pissed off via email and phone versus everybody pissed off in person. And this is like one of the tougher ones, I think, too, because Florida is such a destination race for so many people. It has actually a huge international flavor to it. South America and people flying over because of the time of year and the course. And hey, I mean, and it's also one of those, a really, really popular one to bring your family. Obviously, it's the beach. I mean, that's a huge sell. It's a Saturday race, which is also a huge sell. These athletes can make it back to work on Monday if they choose to, or a lot of people are making a vacation. Obviously, you got people that book this out. And the biggest struggle, I think, for me mentally would have been like I've trained all year long. Like late season races are hard enough because the mental burnout chances are incredibly high, but the devastation of the area, I mean, they just it wasn't going to happen. So they ended up canceling the venue. They did not cancel the race. And I thought they may actually just push it back and have it next year. But I can totally see why they did what they did, because why push the race back when you don't know how recovery and rebuilding efforts are going to go? The last thing you want to do is have to push it back again. Mm-hmm. So they went with the safe play. And I got to admit, they were incredibly resourceful. They relocated the race to Haines City, which is I think basically Orlando, so Disney World area. But that's also a good, I think, maybe 4 to 6 hours south of the original location. Totally different climate as well. I mean, Panama City this time of year can be in the 50s and 60s. Orlando, I think, over the weekend was in like the 90s. So just a smidge different. And the course couldn't be any more different. You go from an open water ocean swim to a lake swim. You go from a totally pancake flat, one loop, I believe, bike course to a 2-loop bike course with some of like the only quote unquote hills that are in Florida. And then you go to a almost night and day run. The run there in Haines City is actually, I think, a little bit of it's off road, but it's actually, it's not back half Chattanooga hilly, but it's got rollers, so totally different. So I think the biggest, and let's just say, so I got to say, incredibly resourceful. Haines City is a 70.3 that they have there the second Saturday or Sunday in April, I believe. So they're familiar with the course. They know the course. They have the race director there. So, I mean, big kudos for pulling off just a 2-week notice, Ironman, basically, at a brand new venue. Where I think the trouble lies with so many athletes is, and I get it. Like, please don't come at me with like but what about the hurricane and the devastation and the people? Like, I get it. It sucks, and I feel bad for people down there. But for the athletes that are doing this as well, they've got flights that they probably can't get refunded. I mean, or they'll lose money, a lot of money, flying into Panama City to flying into Orlando. Then you got to have rental cars. more than likely as well, because one of the great things about Panama City is you fly into Panama City. If you do, and take an Uber or a cab or whatever to your hotel, everything is walkable. I mean, the race venue is very walkable. There's plenty of places to stay close by. So now you got to get a rental car, and then you got to find a place to stay. Then you got to see if you got to get your hotel refund back. So the logistic is just like kind of a nightmare, and we're looking at like 2 weeks out. So I think that really, is helpful in terms of, giving people an opportunity, which is what they did. They gave people an opportunity, and I think that's great. And I kind of figured they would do this, but it wasn't until early this morning that they actually did, and that I guess they are now also giving athletes who cannot make the race because it's a quote unquote Saturday and they also moved it to a day. They moved it to a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Now they've actually allowed athletes who cannot make this new race date because not because of the venue change so much, but because of the race date, that they are giving them an option to defer to Ironman Texas only, because Ironman Texas is on a Saturday. And I think that's where I think it was a very, very good option. I think a good customer service solution, because it's not just they changed the whole thing. It's a brand new race, a brand new Ironman on a totally different day. So I think giving those athletes an option is a good thing to do. So you can just show up and race, or you can transfer to Texas. There's no refund option that I'm aware of. There's no other option. It's, you go with the flow and dealt the cards that were given you, and that, in life, and acts of nature that happen are out of their control, and you sign your life away when you fill out these registration links and waivers that, acts of God basically don't get you a refund. Because they're losing a ton of money too in this, I'm sure. But so I think those are two good options. I was skeptical at first and hesitant because I was afraid they weren't going to offer another option, and I think that would have really sucked. But I give them props for coming up with a solution on the same weekend at least, although a different location. It's going to be about adapting and overcoming with a totally different venue and a totally different race course. Yeah, it's in the same state, but it's, like I said, I think 4 to 6 hours south. It's going to be hotter. It's going to be hillier. Everything is going to be different. Everything. And so, props to, everyone who's going to make it down there, and props to everyone who's like, you know what, I can't make it on Sunday. I'd feel more comfortable, going and doing a different race because it fits my life better, and that's how it's going to be. So I think, a lot of solutions were given, and then you're also going to have a handful of athletes who just say, who just choose not to do it. Mm-hmm. Because of all the different uncertainties and logistics and stuff like that, and that's up to them.
Yeah. Yeah. At first I was like, man, why do they just limit it to Texas or whatever? But I feel like, why not give like 100 opportunities in Chattanooga, Louisville, Lake Placid, Montreal, whatever it is. But I get it, because they're probably just like, all right, we're going to give them a solid option, and then hopefully, because they don't want everybody just not going, I would imagine, is part of their deal too. So, but let me ask you this, because I've been around triathlon. You've been around it longer than me, and for the last 5 or 6 years I've been in, it really seems like the last couple of years they've just had so many things like this. Mm-hmm. Was it always like that, like back in the day? I mean, was there always like race cancellations and moves and swim shortens and? I
mean, I think that this is just this year's just an anomaly.
But even last year, whatever, like the Maryland, I guess there's just been a lot of goofy stuff going on.
Yeah, I think I think this year has just been more of an aberration than anything else. The only race I know that was even like remotely changed last year was Maryland. So yeah, I think it was just kind of one of those unlucky years.
Okay. Yeah, that's too bad. It's just Florida's always been then, right? Now?
Yep. Always been in.
And is this technically hurricane season, or is it just kind of
this is hurricane. I think the beginning of hurricane season. I think. I'm not a weatherman. I don't get paid to make random guesses and be wrong 95% of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, what a great job, though.
Yeah, it's just
weathermen and archaeologists, I think, are the
archaeologists could be sweet. You know, keep getting paid to go out and go.
I was out digging today, and found these 6 bones, and let's see if I can.
It's not even that. You probably dig 300 days a year and don't find anything.
Yeah, and then you pull out
do that, though?
Like a 2-centimeter bone and some fragments. You're like, play Jenga for 3 hours while you're having a Lunchable, and you're like, you know what? We're gonna call this the, Tyrannosaurus Plexa bronchiolitis saurus. Let's just say it was a vegetarian. It lived, I don't know, 6 trillion years ago. Bam! Done. Now we're on the cover of National Geographic.
Headline news.
New species. Because the funny thing is like all the dinosaurs that we thought were real and legitimate, they've all been changed because it was all BS in the last 15 years. What a job! I can just make just make shit up for a living and dig all day. It's like a grown up 3-year-old. I'm just gonna go dig in the sand all day, and I'm just gonna make stuff up with my imagination. But hey, if you got that kind of a gig, we got any archaeologists listening, and you're listening to the podcast while you dig in dirt, keep it up.
Keep it going, man. You figured it out.
Exactly. You figured it out. Live your hashtag best life.
Yeah. So, 4 days later after the race, any general consensus from your athletes about their moods and attitudes and going forward?
Moods and attitudes going forward. I think they're
still flying high, or are we
no, they're all flying high, man.
Good.
Why would you be?
Yeah, no, I know.
It's
it's about the 2-week mark when things kind of start going, man, I miss the attention.
Don't get me wrong. I've already gotten hey, 2019 plans. God, you got plus. But yeah, I mean, and that's what I want next Monday's podcast to be. How to decide what your off-season focus / goals should be.
Okay.
Because I can tell you right now, you're more than likely looking in the wrong area.
Ooh.
Teaser
it is. Can you wait till Monday? Now is the big question.
I got a buddy who used to work in the industry.
Oh, yeah?
He gave me that tip.
Yeah, you just got to kind of leave them hanging.
Yeah, and I'll just tell you, can I throw in another one, or is that too much of a teaser?
No, double teaser. This is like a cluster buster, we used to call these.
Cluster buster.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to drop a little double tease. I can tell you that the best off-season goals that you can have nothing to do with swimming, cycling, or running.
Wow.
That's all I have to say about that.
Man, that just threw me for a spin.
That's your Thursday cluster buster, people.
Mm-hmm. All right, if you're still hanging around, you like the podcast, we know a lot of people reached out to us over the weekend at Louisville, a lot of podcast fans from all over the country, it seemed. And you want to keep us fired up and keep going through the winter. You can support the podcast at patreon.com/crushingiron. We have a little monthly donation kind of set up. Really helps us out, keeps us going. There's a lot of ways you can do that. You can also go to the website. We've got some gear on sale up there. T-shirts with the logo, and we're going to be adding some more stuff to that store, so keep an eye out for that. That really helps us with, you get a little something and give a little something.
That's right.
We've got the website. If you're thinking about getting coaching, for the off season and next year. Get you right on the track. We've got a coaching page at I do that all the time.
Oh, dude, edit that out.
I'm gonna. We got a coaching page at crushingiron.com.
Go to crushingiron.com.
You had me in cluster buster mode, man.
I know, man. You're back in it.
Wow, see, this is like that's an interesting thing, man. Like how long things take to get out of your soul. Mm-hmm. Just sort of like subconscious. But yeah, crushingiron.com. We got it all up there.
Yeah, we got it all. And we appreciate you joining us. Continue to shoot us emails. Let us know about your experiences with the podcast or at Ironman Louisville. And we look forward to hearing from you. And we'll be back better than ever, hopefully, on Monday.
Yeah. And sign up, follow Crushing Iron on YouTube. I've got a boatload of video in the works for coming up there. We had an army of C26 athletes shooting video with their phones all day at Louisville, and going to compile that. I've been organizing and downloading transfers and all kinds of stuff like that. So I'm excited to see what we can pull together regarding that day, which was so memorable for so many.
Mm-hmm.
What else? Oh, we're all over that Instagram.
All over that Instagram.
Man. Oh, that's just like missing the boat, man.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't do any of it during Louisville. Not a single post.
I think I put up one story from the finish line after I got done. But yeah. But follow us on Instagram. Give us a little incentive to get on there.
Yeah, exactly. We'll totally disrupt your newsfeed at least once every 2 weeks.
Any other announcements or teases you got there, buddy?
Nah, that's it, man.
Hey, thanks a lot for listening to the Crushing Iron podcast every Monday and Thursday forever.
And we'll see you next Monday.
All right. Thanks, man.
See you, man.